All right, got it. Welcome, everyone, the YouTube family. We are reading this book, Healing is the New High. And allow me, yes, I will just share the book here. So, we have finished the first four chapters, and we are at chapter 5. Work with you in a new way. The mind is flexible, it wants to learn, and it's willing to change. Hold on a sec. Can we take a breath together? Just one deep breath right now. Because we've been through a lot. You've been through a lot. You've been through a lot in your life, and you've been through a lot by moving through this book so far. How do you feel? If you feel unsettled or unsteady, don't worry. It's normal. Confronting memories, especially the most traumatic ones, and sitting with them is a big deal. Remember to give yourself time and space to feel good during this process. What makes you feel good? Perhaps it's going for a walk in nature, having a coffee with a friend, spending an evening in with a loved one, going to the cinema, cuddling your dog. You deserve to do the things that lift your spirits and soothe your soul. This healing process doesn't have to be all hard. Life is still a big, beautiful experience to be lived. You are still a miraculous arrangement of atoms, a unique expression of energy, and you are meant to be here. The impact of childhood events. We've done a lot of work on assessing experiences and memories and shedding light on them so we can begin to let them go. In this chapter, we start a new phase in the healing journey, coming to the present moment and looking into the future. Before we get into that, though, I want you to go a little deeper into a concept I touched on earlier, reparenting. Because this is the perfect time in your journey to take control of the way you want to learn for the rest of your life, to welcome your childlike curiosity and willingness to learn, and to discover how to choose the way you respond to things instead of reacting from earlier impressions or traumas. Something I've always found fascinating is the way people choose to make themselves unhappy. I'm using the word choose because often it is voluntary decision. Many of us, including me, participate in experiences that we know are going to cause us pain. I used to eat for the sake of eating. I'd binge on junk food, things I could easily assess in large quantities, foods that would make me feel pretty icky and uncomfortable and emotionally drained or low. Initially, I thought I did this because I loved food so much and I was bored. But that reasoning was incomplete. Eating throughout the day was quite a luxurious activity to appease my boredom, given my tough childhood. When I was young, my family didn't have a lot of money, and there were times when proper meals were scarce. I was used to expecting hunger. I knew that having a solid meal one day didn't necessarily mean I'd have one the next day. On top of that, my mother would insist that if I wanted to be strong and healthy, I'd need to eat all my food. This might not seem so tragic. In fact, you could argue that it's normal for parents to tell their kids this. But in the circumstances in which we were raised, I felt great pressure to finish all my food at every opportunity, even if my body was resisting it. You see, I had a desire to be strong and healthy so I could protect my family from the shady creatures who lurked around our neighborhood, such as kidnappers, or followed us home, such as alcoholics, or from the anonymous strangers who'd call us in the middle of the night and threaten to take away my mum, and from our rowdy and racist neighbors who'd get wasted and disturb us throughout the night. I feared for my survival and for my family's survival. If food was going to help me protect them by making me strong and healthy, I was going to keep eating it. Eventually, overeating became habitual. So, with introspection, as I moved through my healing process in recent years, I realized that this was the root cause of my excessive boredom eating. I'd integrated that belief into my way of being, the belief that when food was available, I had to consume as much as of it as I could because I had no idea if I was going to get another meal. It was a response driven by fear and an instinct of survival that had settled deep into my psyche while I was still developing child. But the outcome is real. Terms was excess weight. But the outcome in real terms was excess weight, lethargy, and disappointment in myself. Many of us will do something for the sake of doing it, even if it's unhealthy or it doesn't improve our state of being in any way, and without questioning the reason behind it. For example, a woman I worked with a few years back described to me her addiction to her ex. He was a covert narcissist who physically abused her on a regular basis. Yet, while it pained her to be with him, she felt empty and bored when she was not exposed to his aggression and manipulation. She was disgusted with herself for feeling this way and for going back to him again and again, but she struggled to break the cycle. It turned out that as a child, she'd lived with abusive caregivers, and that trauma shaped her view of the world. Her relationship with and her needs for intense emotional experiences. She associated the trauma with a negative belief about herself. This is very common and it becomes part of why the experience gets stuck and replayed. She craved for the intensity of abuse. It was like a drug that she'd been programmed to need, even as it destroyed her bit by bit. Uncertainty made her feel alive. So it was no wonder she kept going back to this man. Paradoxically, he was the root to her survival. Her limiting belief in this case was that violence and aggression were a necessary part of a relationship, and without it, life couldn't feel alive. Perhaps through the work I have done already, you've identified traumatic memories and limiting beliefs that are having impact on your body today. Have you begun to uncover the reasons behind some of the negative patterns or the habits you can't shake that you are perpetually frustrated by? Our limiting beliefs aren't always as obvious as this. Sometimes a much more subtle event will trigger a belief that will hold us back for years to come. For example, a good friend of mine remembers a memory moment during his childhood when he was asked a scientific question. He thought he knew the answer, so he said, "I know it's," and relayed what he thought was the answer to the question. The adult who posed the question laughed at him openly. "Nice try," he said, "but you're so wrong. Don't answer a question like that unless you're sure you know the answer. Just say you don't know." And as a result of that brief and seemingly insignificant childhood interaction, my friend has spent his entire life not stepping up to answer questions. He keeps quiet. He holds the belief that if his response to a question isn't 100% accurate, he'll be laughed at and mocked. He's one of the most intelligent guys I know and thoughtful with it. People would people would do well to hear his opinions, and I know from our relaxed one-to-one conversation that he brings a lot of insight to any discussion, and yet he holds back, listening to everyone else speak and keeping his knowledge and opinions to himself. Wonderful. You deserve to do the things that lift your spirits and soothe your soul. This healing process doesn't have to be all hard. Life is still a big, beautiful experience to be lived. You are still a miraculous arrangement of atoms, a unique expression of energy, and you're meant to be here. The power of reparenting. In all of the examples I've given, and in any experience that you have had of integrating a limiting belief into your worldview as a child, a process called reparenting could be beneficial. Our minds have been conditioned by the events we've lived through and the people we've listened to. We've learned that these can create deep impressions on us. Some of these impressions are positive and helpful, but others are certainly not. And unhelpful ones create patterns of thought, emotions, and behavior that hold us back. They don't empower us or help us find joy. Instead, we experience fear, insecurity, and sadness, and so we suffer. You aren't responsible for your childhood conditioning, but you need to take responsibility for changing it now as an adult. Blaming your past for a limiting mindset doesn't fix it. You have to seek new ways to think and being and practice those new ways until they become more real to you than your old beliefs. Practice really is key, and reparenting is a simple tool that you can use every single day. Reparenting is usually taught to parents because it's a way to care for yourself as an adult at the same time as caring for your children, and to address your childhood trauma so that you don't pass it on to your kids. But I believe this process can be of value to everyone, parents or not. Dr. Art Martin, author of the book Reparenting Yourself, writes in detail about how we can identify the rejection we experienced as children that now affects the way we react to certain situations as an adult. And the and in the Inner Child Workbook, recovery therapist Catherine Taylor teaches similar techniques. She guides readers to reparent the child within in order to heal long-lasting shame, anger, and fear of abandonment. Taylor names 6 steps for the reparenting process, beginning with identifying the pain and figuring out what childhood experience it might come from. Then, feeling the pain, detaching from it, and eventually releasing it to reclaim a childlike sense of joy. I'd recommend both of these books if the idea of reparenting your hurt inner child resonates with you. But here, I'll share my own take on reparenting, which has been influenced by Taylor, Martin, and other thinkers who've guided me in my healing path. For me, reparenting is essentially about reshaping our capacity for learning. It's about welcoming new experiences and making choices about what we integrate into our belief system about ourselves and our lives, and what we accept and let go as an experience. All experiences, good or bad, have something to teach us. But not all experiences are worth weaving into our understanding of who we are and what we want. The impressions are picked up throughout our childhood have created beliefs that block us from creating new, more helpful beliefs. They keep us stuck. Blaming your past for a limiting belief mindset doesn't fix it. You have to seek new ways of thinking and being and practice those new ways until they become more real to you than your old beliefs. We can all benefit from reparenting. Imagine sitting down with yourself as a child. You are an adult and you look your childhood self in the eye. You know what this child has learned. You know what's going to hurt them and hold them back as they grow older. And you get to say, hey, that thing you learned, it's not true. I completely get why you believe it so deeply. And I know that letting it go might feel hard. And it's okay if you need to cry or shout or scream about it. But it's not true. What is true is that you deserve love and to know that you are safe and that you are good. Sometimes reparenting is as simple as repeating a childhood interaction in a different way. Remember my friend who keeps his opinions to himself because an adult once mocked him for getting something wrong? He could imagine himself on that day as a child and he could be the adult. Instead of laughing and embarrassing that child version of himself, he could do what the adult should have done. He could say, that's a great answer. Actually, the answer is this, but I understand what you're saying. And it's really cool that you know that stuff. 2 sentences worded differently could change my friend's feelings about sharing his ideas and getting things wrong. This is, of course, reparenting simplified. But that simplicity is powerful in itself. You can do this. You can look at your list of limiting beliefs, go back to the memories attached to them, and be the adult who talks to yourself in those moments. What would you do differently? How did your childhood self really need to be treated or spoken to? This isn't just speculation. Reparenting has been found to be an effective therapeutic process for severely traumatized children and adults. And reparenting techniques are backed up by neuroscience. Brain imaging studies show that the adult brain still has the plasticity of a child's brain, although to a lesser degree. What this means is that we still have the capacity to create new neural pathways or connections in our brain. Neural pathways are the links between one part of the nervous system and another. They have plasticity, which means they can change, becoming stronger, weaker, disappearing, or developing entirely new ones, depending on the experiences, thoughts, and emotions that we have. For example, if you regularly tell yourself you're worthless when you make a mistake, you may create neural pathway that make that reaction and the emotions and physical sensations that come with it more and more automatic. It becomes easier and quicker for you to feel that you're worthless. But if you change that and begin to work on telling yourself that you're learning and developing every time you make a mistake, you start to build and then strengthen a pathway towards that feeling of growth. The responses you repeat become more and more natural to you until you jump straight to those responses without even having to think about it. The new system of understanding that we create through reparenting can weaken the negative connections we made as children and build stronger alternative paths that give us a more positive way of seeing things. These new pathways are based on our insight and knowledge as adults, rather than on the false beliefs we absorbed from the inevitably flawed adults who cared for us when we were young. Oh, and by the way, by getting this far into this book, you've already begun to reparent yourself. Because reparenting is essentially the practice of relearning how to acknowledge and meet your needs as an adult. Take a moment to thank yourself for that. Working through the practice of relearning your needs doesn't mean you had bad parents or that your parents didn't love you. It just means that your parents were, as all humans are, imperfect. Their care for you was influenced by their own limitations, beliefs, and past experiences. They may have done the very best they could with what they had at the same time. And it's not an insult to them when you take action to give yourself the care and love you've always needed. Now let's get into the next practice. Practice 6, rewire your limiting beliefs. In the last chapter, you built a list of the limiting beliefs that you've carried with you in your subconscious for some time, perhaps for most of your life. That is practice 5. Some of these beliefs will have grown out of specific traumatic or painful experiences. Now is the time to rewrite them, and I mean that quite literally. Go back to your list of limiting beliefs and select 5 memories. Once these memories lose their emotional charge, meaning you can think of event without the same intensity, add another 3 memories and continue down your list at a pace that you are comfortable with. Choose the beliefs that are most present in your life, those that dictate your decisions, your relationships, and the way you live in the world. Choose the beliefs that cause you the most doubt and hold you back from taking the risks you wish you were brave enough to take, or that act as barriers between you and the open, powerfully loving relationships you'd like to have. Maybe they are the beliefs you spent the most time on as you were meditating through your list of memories because they feel the strongest. As an example, here are some of my own limiting beliefs that I've made a great effort to rewrite using this practice. Number 1, I have no power over my future because my destiny has already been chosen and it looks like a struggle. Number 2, I'll always be financially poor. 3, I'll never find true love in this lifetime. 4, I have no natural talents or special skills like other people do. 5, no one will take my thought or opinion seriously if I share them. You can get started in your own time. Although you can fit this practice into your life at any time of day that works for your schedule, if possible, it's helpful to work through it just before falling asleep or immediately after waking up. Neuroscience suggests that the mind is more easily programmable during those moments. This could be because The theta brain waves that we experience as we shift from waking to sleeping or from sleeping to waking play a key role in our memory and cognitive function. This state of mind has now been recorded and analyzed in modern brain imaging studies. However, it's been known for much longer as an important opportunity to influence the subconscious. Tibetan Buddhists, for example, call this in between state the bardo of dreams and have utilized it for centuries as an important time for meditative practices and for preparation for lucid dreams. So if you can rewrite your beliefs during that period of subconscious openness, the impact could be stronger and happen more quickly. Let us do the exercise tomorrow.